The diagnostic screens showed perfect readings while the massive nuclear engine sat completely dead beneath the USS Enterprise flight deck. Chief Engineer Martinez slammed his tablet down as another test sequence failed to explain why 60,000 tons of aircraft carrier remained motionless in Norfolk Naval Base. Sarah Mitchell stood quietly near the reactor access panel, her weathered hands tracing connections that the Navy's best engineers had already examined twice. Her civilian contractor badge swayed as she crouched to inspect a junction box that everyone else had dismissed as secondary equipment. Martinez noticed her scribbling notes about coolant flow patterns that didn't match the computer models. The woman had been asking strange questions all morning about original specifications from 15 years ago, as if she somehow understood this propulsion system better than the people who maintained it daily. When she requested the historical maintenance logs, Lieutenant Commander Brooks laughed and told her those files were classified above her clearance level. Sarah simply nodded and continued examining components that seemed perfectly functional to everyone else in the engineering bay. Admiral Thompson's voice echoed through the engineering bay as he demanded an immediate status report from Martinez. The deployment schedule could not be delayed another day, and the Pacific Fleet needed this carrier operational within 48 hours. Sarah had moved to the main coolant distribution panel when the Admiral's footsteps stopped abruptly behind her. She could feel his presence as she continued tracing the primary flow circuits with her finger, following pathways that the diagnostic computers insisted were functioning normally. The Admiral stepped closer and read the name on her contractor identification badge. His face went completely white as he processed what he was seeing. Every conversation in the engineering bay ceased when Admiral Thompson suddenly snapped to rigid attention. "Commander Mitchell," the Admiral said quietly, his voice carrying across the silent room. "I should have known they would call you back for something like this. The smartest naval engineer who ever served on my watch." Every engineer in the bay turned to stare as the most senior officer on the base stood at attention before the woman they had been dismissing as just another civilian contractor all morning long. Martinez cleared his throat nervously as the Admiral's salute lingered in the air above them. Lieutenant Commander Brooks stepped backward from the diagnostic station, suddenly uncertain about his earlier dismissal of Sarah's request for classified maintenance records. Sarah turned from the coolant panel and nodded respectfully at Admiral Thompson before addressing the room of stunned engineers. She explained that the computer diagnostics were reading surface symptoms while missing the actual problem buried 3 levels deeper in the reactor cooling system. The Admiral authorized her access to every classified system on the carrier and ordered his staff to provide whatever historical documentation she required. Sarah immediately requested the original design specifications from the Newport News shipyard and the complete maintenance history dating back to the ship's commissioning ceremony. As she began cross-referencing current readings with baseline performance data from 15 years earlier, a troubling pattern emerged that made her stomach tighten with recognition. The engine failure was not random mechanical breakdown, but followed a very specific sequence that she had seen once before in her career. Sarah looked up from the technical manuals and told Admiral Thompson they needed to contact every other carrier in the fleet immediately. Admiral Thompson contacted fleet headquarters while Sarah continued analyzing the reactor data that revealed increasingly disturbing correlations. Martinez finally asked the question everyone was thinking about: her background and why the Admiral showed such immediate respect. Sarah explained that she had been the lead propulsion engineer during the development phase of this exact carrier class at Newport News Shipbuilding. She designed many of the systems they were now troubleshooting and knew every component specification from memory after spending 3 years perfecting the reactor integration. The Admiral's secure phone buzzed with an urgent message from Pacific Fleet Command. USS Carl Vinson was reporting identical symptoms in the Western Pacific, with their propulsion system showing the same mysterious failure pattern that defied all standard diagnostic protocols. Sarah studied both sets of technical readings and identified subtle anomalies in the coolant distribution timing that indicated deliberate sabotage rather than mechanical failure. Someone with intimate knowledge of carrier propulsion systems was systematically targeting the fleet's operational readiness. She told Admiral Thompson they were facing a coordinated attack on naval infrastructure and needed to assume every carrier was potentially compromised until they could identify the sabotage method and develop countermeasures. Fleet headquarters confirmed that USS Abraham Lincoln was experiencing similar propulsion anomalies near the Persian Gulf, making 3 carriers potentially compromised within a 12-hour window. Sarah's analysis revealed that the sabotage devices were triggering in sequence across different time zones. Admiral Thompson assembled an emergency conference call with Pentagon officials while Sarah examined the pattern of system failures that pointed to infiltration of the contractor supply chain. The sabotage components had been installed during routine maintenance cycles over the past 18 months. Sarah identified the specific part numbers that had been compromised and traced them back to a single subcontractor who supplied coolant sensors to all affected carriers. The devices were designed to create cascade failures that would disable propulsion systems during critical deployment periods. Naval intelligence confirmed that foreign operatives had penetrated the supply chain and were systematically undermining fleet readiness through sophisticated technical sabotage. Sarah's unique knowledge of both the original design specifications and the current sabotage methodology made her the only person capable of developing effective countermeasures. The Admiral placed her in charge of the emergency response team, with full authority to coordinate repairs across the entire Pacific and Atlantic fleets before more carriers became vulnerable. Sarah worked through the night developing countermeasures while monitoring reports from affected carriers across the globe. The deployment schedules for 3 major naval operations hung in the balance as more ships reported suspicious system behaviors that matched the sabotage profile. Admiral Thompson received urgent orders from Washington to resolve the crisis within 24 hours before enemy forces could exploit the fleet's compromised readiness. Sarah's technical analysis indicated that the sabotage devices had timing mechanisms that would trigger additional failures, if not neutralized immediately. The USS Carl Vinson remained dead in the water 600 miles from the nearest port, making it impossible to bring the ship back for repair. Sarah would need to board the carrier while at sea and work directly in the engine compartments during rough weather conditions. Sarah packed her engineering tools and classified technical manuals while Admiral Thompson arranged for helicopter transport to the Vinson's location. She knew that someone aboard the carrier might still be coordinating the sabotage operation and could try to prevent her from completing the repairs. Weather reports showed a Pacific storm system moving toward the Vinson's position, which would make helicopter operations dangerous and complicate her work in the reactor spaces below deck. The helicopter lurched violently as it approached the USS Carl Vinson through heavy rain and 30-foot swells that made the massive carrier pitch like a cork in the Pacific storm. Sarah gripped her equipment bag as the pilot fought crosswinds to reach the flight deck. Captain Rodriguez met her at the landing zone and escorted her immediately to the engine spaces where his engineering team had been working unsuccessfully for 18 hours. The reactor compartment felt like an oven as Sarah descended into the mechanical spaces that housed the sabotage propulsion system. Working by flashlight in the swaying compartment, Sarah located the compromised coolant sensor that was sending false readings to the main computer. The device looked identical to standard Navy equipment, but contained additional circuitry that created the cascade failure sequence. As she began disarming the sabotage device, Sarah noticed someone watching her from the upper catwalk. The figure disappeared when she looked up, but she realized that whoever had installed these devices might still be aboard the ship and working to prevent their removal. Sarah continued working on the delicate electronics while the ship rolled heavily in the storm, knowing that one wrong move could trigger the backup sabotage protocol and disable the entire reactor system permanently. Sarah carefully disconnected the sabotage device when her scanner detected additional signal transmissions from other locations throughout the ship. The compromised sensor was part of a larger network that could trigger simultaneous failures across multiple carrier systems if activated remotely. Footsteps echoed on the metal grating above as someone approached her position in the reactor compartment. A maintenance technician appeared on the catwalk and told her that Captain Rodriguez needed to see her immediately in the bridge. Sarah recognized the urgency in maintaining communications with the fleet while she traced the sabotage network. She activated her secure radio and transmitted the device specifications to Admiral Thompson, so other carriers could begin searching for identical components in their own systems. The technician became agitated when Sarah continued working instead of following him to the bridge. He insisted that she stop what she was doing and come with him immediately, but something in his manner made Sarah suspicious about his actual intentions. Sarah realized this man might be the saboteur when she noticed his tools included electronics equipment that was not standard Navy maintenance gear. She needed to complete the countermeasures and warn the fleet before he could trigger the backup activation sequence that would cripple multiple carriers simultaneously. The technician pulled a remote device from his toolkit and threatened to activate the backup sabotage protocol if Sarah did not stop transmitting countermeasures to the fleet. She could see multiple carrier positions on his screen, confirming that he controlled sabotage networks across the entire Pacific and Atlantic fleets. Sarah continued working while talking to him calmly, explaining that she understood his technical expertise and asking questions about the sabotage design. Her engineering curiosity seemed genuine as she complimented the sophisticated nature of his operation. While keeping him distracted with technical discussion, Sarah quietly completed the final connections that would send automatic countermeasure instructions to every carrier in both fleets. The storm was breaking overhead as her secure transmission reached Admiral Thompson with complete neutralization protocols. The saboteur realized too late that Sarah had been buying time while uploading the solution to Naval Headquarters. He lunged toward her with the activation device, but Sarah had anticipated his move and grabbed a heavy wrench from her equipment bag. Captain Rodriguez appeared on the catwalk with security personnel just as Sarah knocked the remote device from the saboteur's hands and prevented him from triggering the coordinated attack that would have disabled American naval power across 2 oceans. Admiral Thompson's voice crackled over the secure radio with confirmation that all 7 affected carriers had successfully located and neutralized their sabotage devices using Sarah's countermeasure protocols. The coordinated attack that could have crippled American naval operations worldwide had been prevented with minutes to spare. Sarah worked alongside Captain Rodriguez's engineering team to restore the USS Carl Vinson's propulsion system to full operational status. Her intimate knowledge of the reactor design allowed her to optimize performance beyond original specifications while ensuring complete removal of all sabotage components. Reports flooded in from fleet headquarters as carriers across both oceans came back online with improved system monitoring that would prevent future infiltration. Sarah's modifications included enhanced security protocols that made the propulsion systems resistant to similar sabotage attempts. The storm had cleared by the time the Vinson's engines roared back to life, and Sarah felt the massive ship surge forward through the Pacific swells with the power and precision she had designed into these systems 15 years earlier. Naval intelligence confirmed that the captured saboteur was part of a larger foreign operation that had been systematically targeting American military infrastructure for over 2 years before Sarah's expertise exposed their methods. Pentagon officials contacted Admiral Thompson to express their gratitude for Sarah's actions that had prevented what could have been the most devastating attack on American naval capability since Pearl Harbor. The Secretary of the Navy personally requested a meeting to discuss her future involvement in fleet security. Sarah returned to Norfolk Naval Base, where the original crisis had begun, but now every engineer and technician knew exactly who she was and what she had accomplished. The respectful nods and immediate responses to her technical suggestions showed how completely her status had transformed. Admiral Thompson offered Sarah a return to active duty with promotion to full captain and assignment as Chief of Naval Engineering Security. The position would give her authority to oversee propulsion system integrity across the entire fleet and prevent future vulnerability to sophisticated attacks. Sarah considered the offer carefully while reviewing the technical improvements she had implemented during the crisis. Her modifications had not only solved the immediate problem, but created lasting security enhancements that would protect naval operations for decades. She told Admiral Thompson that she preferred to remain in her consultant role, where she could work across multiple projects and maintain the flexibility to respond quickly when the Navy faced technical challenges that required her unique expertise. 6 months later, Sarah walked through the same engineering bay where Chief Engineer Martinez had once dismissed her questions about classified maintenance records. Now, every technical manual bore her security clearance updates, and every propulsion system included her enhanced monitoring protocols. The USS Enterprise was preparing for deployment with complete confidence in its operational security, thanks to the countermeasures that Sarah had developed during those critical 24 hours. Young engineers approached her with respectful questions about reactor design principles that she had pioneered decades earlier. Admiral Thompson visited the engineering spaces to personally thank Sarah for accepting the permanent consultant position that gave the Navy access to her expertise whenever technical crises threatened fleet readiness. Her quiet presence had become a symbol of hidden competence waiting to emerge when most needed. Sarah smiled as she watched the new engineers' learning systems that she had originally designed, knowing that expertise often remains invisible until circumstances demand its revelation. The most valuable knowledge sometimes belongs to those who appear unremarkable until the moment arrives for them to save the day. Have you ever had specialized knowledge that others overlooked until it really mattered? Share your story about when your expertise was finally recognized during a critical moment.